get to 300,000 by 2040. To begin to project to anything further than 10 years is based on pure speculation rather than on concrete facts. Even projecting to 300,000 is based on a lot of assumptions that may or may not happen. So even this planning projection is well beyond what is reasonable to assume. Regina has only grown 1.9% annually between 2006 and 2011. Saskatchewan's only grown 1.34% over the same period. And even last year, the province's population only went up by 1.5%. And the highest growth rate proposed for Canada is 1.67%. Now, secondly, anything from now on will have to live within what is called a post-peak oil scenario. Experts say that we've already seen peak oil, and that this reality will dictate that life here will be significantly different than the past few decades, that being a fossil fuel rich as well as a cheap energy economy. When energy becomes more and more expensive and scarce, this will require us to dictate, not suggest, a significantly and fundamentally different manner of building, planning, and living. Now, I haven't seen that the cities began a peak oil depletion protocol to begin to manage their energy needs, to sustain even our current growth, not to mention the grand fantasy to double our population. We still think of progress as an inevitable one-directional journey in which life gets better with each passing generation. This has largely been the case, but progress has always included progress traps where linear, blinkered pursuit of progress, such as cheap, abundant energy liberated from fossil fuels, creates circumstances, in this case, carbon emissions and subsequent climate change, that then undermine our potential for future progress. Now, we've recently passed the 400 part per million level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, and that hasn't been seen around this planet for 800,000 years. Now, this growing carbon pollution problem predicts that climate in the mid and late parts of this century will be fundamentally different than even today. And again, I don't see any action by this council to curb the carbon footprint or even react to the increasing variability of climate. Now, water availability is another issue and significant factor into the future whether or not you support the growth scenario. Now, right now, I don't see in this scenario any discussion of the required $2 billion investment in water infrastructure needed to supply Regina with water for such a large change in population. Either that or an assurance from the potash industries that they will not be expanding or opening the 3 or 4 potash mines proposed for this area. Fifthly, my comments are where are the people going to be coming from and where are they going to live? Now, there are predicted to be 300 to 400 million environmental refugees because of climate change. So is the mayor going to be inviting some of those to come to Regina? And when you can't even respond quickly enough to the lack of housing for a few thousand people, something that has been known for at least 10 years, how are we going to deal with doubling the population? So is Regina going to be looking more like the shanty towns of Rio or Mexico City, or is this, again, simply a pipe dream? And lastly, how are we going to pay for the infrastructure to support this increased population when we can't repair or replace 80% of our current infrastructure? Costs for repairing infrastructure are also going up 7 to 10% each year, and those aren't including the other known costs that this council is expected to be paying for and or asking of our taxpayers in the coming decades. So what I see needing to happen is the following. We need to be directing development more inward to where more than half of it's built on current infrastructure, rather than building more outward. We need to maximize the use of our current infrastructure and begin to reduce our physical footprint. Number 2 is we need to move to a peak oil depletion protocol where we begin to reduce our carbon footprint each year, therefore building resilience into our transportation infrastructure. Now, this could be also expanded into other energy needs, but not just transportation. And lastly, we need to be localizing much more of our current resource needs, including our food production. Now, some people in this room would say that if we don't agree with their views on the world, then we're all just naysayers or against everything. Now, I am a fairly pragmatic and realistic person. I don't waste my time on either petty fights or worthless activities. I only bring this up because what is being proposed, in my mind, is seriously wasting our taxpayers' money, our civic administration's time and their resources, as well as giving people a false hope that things will change. I don't intend to simply put the pedal to the metal when I see we are approaching a brick wall at a very high speed. Now, the scale and urgency and complexity of our interdependent and interconnected challenges, from climate change to a post-carbon future, as well as water scarcity, makes denial a very attractive place to be. It's easy to support the status quo and assume someone else will solve the problems. But it takes leadership to say we want a different path to a different future. Now, in 2005, I asked you, why would London, Ontario be willing to start investing $1.4 billion on the bicycle master plan? In May 2006, Portland City Council created a peak oil task force to develop recommendations on appropriate responses to uncertainty in the supply and affordability. And lastly, we have to address peak oil, said Vancouver's Mayor Gregor Robertson. I think we underestimate this at our peril right now, and it needs to be factored in with the decisions we are making this term for sure. And that was December 2008. All of what I have presented are choices that will create more skilled local employment, increase our resiliency, as well as our ability to respond to change. It will fight climate change and strengthen our local economy. It will show leadership in North America. Speculating at this time for a 500,000 person population, in my mind, is simply a waste of time, a distraction, a fantasy, and takes our eyes off of the real problems today that need our attention. We have billions of dollars of debt to pass on to our children and our grandchildren. This long-term scenario will require the citizens of Regina to spend even more billions of dollars, money we don't have, and in my mind, money we don't need to spend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott, for your comments. Any questions of the delegation? There are none. Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. You can return to the gallery, and we'll move on to our next delegation.